And welcome back to the Constitutionals Podcast. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the premier podcast for the website, cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. All right, here we are, doing this podcast one more time. Episode 129, 129 times. I've sat down behind this microphone and chattered on about something else or whatnot. Not in the best of moods, it's fine. Earlier this week, I kept looking at it. I kept looking at my my old video camera. I'm establishing what it is. I kept looking at it this past couple of weeks, and then I realized that the TV I use as a monitor right there. I'm pointing with my foot. You can't see it on camera, but I was pointing with my foot. The TV I use as a monitor is a Vizio. Vizio's the only television manufacturer that still uses component. It has HDMI plus component. So I plugged in the charger for the video camera, let it go for like a minute or two, and then I hooked it up to the TV. And I have, I think, about 12 tapes, 11 to 12 tapes. High 8. Let me show you the camera. All right, if you're watching the video, I just reached over to grab my camera. This is my first video camera. Actually, my only video camera. I've only owned two cameras, or three cameras. This GoPro, the Canon, and this. This is the Sony, I think this is what it's called, a High 8 Handycam. It's a Sony Handycam. It's pretty old, from like the early 2000s. It's got a flip-out LCD, and it's got very, very bad lithium-ion batteries. It's got a maneuverable eyepiece. It pops up and everything, and it's got a little light on the front, and night shot plus mode, digital zoom 990, optical 20, not good, as video out, AV out, which is basically like a 3.5 millimeter plug, and then it goes to component. I wonder if it still has battery from the one. It still has battery. And as you can see, it turns on. There's a light. You can see me. If you're watching the video, I urge you to. You can see me just, oh my God, it's so bad. It's such a bad, it's not that good of a camera. Truly, even for the time, it probably wasn't even that good. But you know what? It did its job. It served its purpose. And so what I used this for was to make movies in my room. I know where your head's going. It's not that. I use it to make movies in my room. And I had a bunch of old toys that I would just make voices and stuff. And I was watching the video. The speaker doesn't work on the camera, otherwise I'd play something for you. But I was watching the video, and it was hearing my voice from the early 2000s when I was just a boy was so surreal, because I had the highest voice in the world, and I have this smooth, seductress voice right here. It was great. It was great. I was playing. I would be voicing the characters, and I'd be like this. Hi, hello, it's me. I'm a Lego. Amazing, wonderful. One day when I get when I get famous. I'll just digitize them and just put them out, or at least little highlights. There are twice I made a movie called The Lego Movie, way before the Lego Movie existed, and I made the Lego Movie 2. I made two movies that are, I think, about 80 minutes in runtime, with no written out story. But there is, very specifically, both movies have opening credits. So on the camera you can do some text. So I read out the Lego Movie 2 and the text, and it's just this very crappy, very blocky text, and you can only you only put it up up top in the middle, or it's got a little scroll wheel, so you can scroll and put the I don't know why I'm doing it to myself, but there's a scroll right here. You can just scroll and put text someplace, and that's how you type and everything. And I this is a very hefty camera. And I put out the titles there, but then on pieces of paper, I'd rip them up, and I'd write executive producer Chad White, casting Chad White, directed by Chad White, written by Chad White. It's very funny. Produced by, I did for I think the Lego Movie 2 I did produced by Chad White, and then I put executive produced by Chad White. I had to give myself top billing with that executive producer credit before I gave myself regular production credit. And also, you can't produce. So there you go. There's that. That was it. And the camera runs on, I believe. Let's see if there's enough battery to get this thing out. So it's gonna slowly pop out. This used to be broken, and then I fixed that at some point when I was a boy. It runs on 8mm Maxwell, and one of them, two of these tapes are just full movies. One of these might actually have some Simpsons on it or South Park or something like that, but otherwise, I was looking at this and I was like, man, and I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, like I asked for it. It's like one of 3 things in my entire life I've ever asked for that I actually got. And I'm very surprised. Looking up the camera on Google to figure out how to fix the speaker, realizing when it came out how young I was. Like my mother got me that camera. It was very nice of her to do that. And it makes me feel like I was Adam Goldberg. If you ever watched The Goldbergs on ABC, which I urge you to do, it's a great sitcom. But he had a camera when he was a boy, and now he's made that show, and he's putting his home movies on ABC sometimes. So at the end of episodes, that's really nice. Anyway, enough of me reminiscing. This first topic it gives you the reality of what podcasters really do and how much they make and everything. If you listen to a lot of podcasts, I don't know if I ever mentioned this last week. I think I probably did, but there are 750,000 podcasts in the world. So the fact that any of them make money is insane. But here we go. We actually have a little idea. This comes from Lifehacker, written by Lisa Rowan. You'll never make money podcasting. So she gives us a statistic, 750,000 podcasts out there. Jack Rysider, who writes about the podcast industry at LimeLink, estimates that 99% of all podcasts make $0. Which is true. When you see the numbers, you'll make sense in a second. Podcasts can charge typically between $15 and $30 per 1,000 downloads they get per episode. Only 7% of podcasts get 5,000 downloads per episode, according to hosting service Libsyn. So if Ridesider says if your show was getting 5,000 downloads per episode and you charge $20 CPM per ad, essentially per ad break, you'd make $100 for that ad. Making $100 a pop to start isn't that bad, but of course you're not going to get that. Okay, so here's the math. The top 1% of podcasts are the ones that get 35,000 downloads per episode. So think your WTFs, your Joe Rogans, your Conan O'Briens, your I need a friend, or Conan O'Brien needs a friend. I need a friend. I need a friend. That's a good title. So think about those. And those typically charge between $25 to $50. Selling 2 ads per episode, a podcast make $4,000 per episode. But that's just 2 ads. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, they have in 2 ad breaks, they'll probably have 6 ads. It feels like it's so long. Or WTF, Mark Maron has 3 sponsors sometimes. So maybe that could, so those numbers would differ. There are more than, if you think about Patreon, Patreon is a different way to make money for a podcaster. This microphone is very close to me, and I don't understand why I don't move it. I just keep leaning back in the chair. Now, this chair does not have a support where it can lean back, so it's a rolly chair, so it's going to fall over at some point, and you'll see it. I'll keep it in. And I've fallen out of the chair before. There are other places instead of using ads, which you'll probably use ads in conjunction with what the other places are. But you go to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or even Patreon. Patreon is the place where most people make their money. Doughboys, The Flagrant Ones, I'm gonna name 2 comedy podcasts. Talking Simpsons, all of these. That's how people make their money. And they have huge followings there. But I have issues with Patreon. The Ride Sider notes that there are more than 9,700 podcast creators on creative fundraising platform Patreon. It estimates that 55% of them make less than $30 per month. $30 per month. There's a guy on YouTube I follow. His name is Ant Dude. I think his real name is Anthony. I don't know. But I've been following him for, I don't know. I think maybe ever since he got on YouTube, because we're around the same age, and he likes Sonic, and he talks about Nintendo stuff all the time. But he has a bone to pick with Microsoft about Xbox. I don't know what his problem is. But he has, so he's been on YouTube for, let's say, almost a decade. And he now has he has a following on YouTube. Maybe, okay, hold on. I can just go to YouTube right now and just look it up. I don't want to throw these numbers out here and feel like a jerk for not getting it right. But he has a decent following on YouTube. It's not a million people, but I think it's close to 500,000 at least. So 354,000, which I was way off. But in my head, I said 350,000, so that's close. But he also started a Patreon. I don't know when, but he started a Patreon at some point within the last couple of years. And he makes $232 per month. Now, I think Patreon takes out 11%. So 2552. So 232 minus 232 times 12. 1284. And then 1284 times 0.11 equals 306. So, 2784. 2784 minus. So he's getting not that much. He's still breaking 2,000, but he has 103 patrons. That's people giving at least $1 per month. And so he's not making he's not making a bad amount. That'll pay for, that amount will pay for my rent and my car note. So that's a decent amount. And, and then you get ad revenue from YouTube. And he doesn't do podcasting, but, that's just a supplemental way of making money. So the writer, the antidote then is to reframe why your podcast exists in the first place, or why you want to spend time making it. Podcasting is, podcasting's a very odd thing to start doing. They're right. You should really think about why you want to do this. Why am I, I could ask myself that very question. Why am I doing this? Why am I making this podcast? Why am I doing C+ Comedy? Why am I doing News Time? Why am I doing these interviews with comedians? And, actually, if you look at my recent interviews, I said to myself, I got to stop doing people who are, I got to stop doing smaller acts. That sounds bad, but I had to stop, because when I started doing, and I was thinking about this on the drive back from work, when I started doing C+ Comedy, I had nothing. And then after a year, I started talking to, some people, and then, some people were, I guess we're tiering people. No, I don't want to do that. But some people were big and some people weren't. And then, over the years, it's been ups and downs in terms of people who are celebrities. But at some point, I gotta, you have to sit down and go, okay, I can't talk to somebody who this is their first show on VH1, and I've never talked about it on VH1, so I'm not crapping on anybody. But this is their first show on VH1, or this is their first album and they self-produced it and it's coming out, because that's not helping me, and it truly is not helping them. If I only have, a certain amount of likes on Facebook, or a certain amount of followers on Twitter, or a certain amount of followers on Instagram. So I figure, if I could reach in and talk to better people. Anyway, that being said, you have to sit down and say, why am I doing this? So I guess essentially why I'm doing this is to hone my craft as a host. And podcasting's the big thing out there. And at one point, so is YouTube. But podcasting is accessible and YouTube is to some extent is accessible for everybody too, because you can just sit down and record. If you think about your phone, you can just get an app and it's there. You can download, what's the one that Spotify bought? Anchor. You can just download Anchor and record your podcast there. And yeah, I mean, it has a time limit and you can only have like 2 people on, and it's stupid, but you can do it. And that's the point. But then you have people who are enthusiasts like myself, and I'll get like a $200 microphone and 2 very crappy cameras and spend, $30 a month on, Adobe stuff, Creative Cloud, just to sit down in front of nobody and say some words. But there you go. This is something very important. If you look at those numbers, the numbers from the top 1%, the podcast who puts out an episode 52 weeks a year, and they get at least 35,000 downloads for one episode, and they charge the ad breaks with $25 to $50 per ad break. They're making $4,000 per episode, essentially 2 ads per episode, basically. If you're doing 52 episodes per year and sold out all the ad slots, that's more than $200,000. But that's not everybody. Sometimes you'll hear podcasters complain that there's no money, and they'll say it cheekily. Especially one of the comedians that I listen to. You'll hear like John Gabris or Tawny Newsome or Hayes and Sean from Hollywood Handbook. You'll hear them say like all $10 I earned, or all $50 or something like that. That $50, they'll say it cheekily, but that it's true. Like that's how much. It's not gonna be that much, and 35,000 downloads. That's a lot. That's not what their podcasts are getting. But Conan's gonna get that. WTF's gonna get that, and that's why they're doing it. And then you have older people, older podcasts that have been doing this since the beginning of podcasting, who since created podcasting, Jimmy Pardo, and then there's Comedy Bang Bang, and I can't imagine that they're making as much as a Conan is. Conan created podcasts, though. I gotta stop doing that. Listen, we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna come back and maybe finish this off. I don't know. Who cares? One. Well, go back. Before we get to the next story, I just want to acknowledge how solemnly I got up in the middle of the break, just scooted over to the camera, to the DSLR, sadly pressed the button, just scooted back, and then just sat down and just like, all right, I'm going to do this. But don't worry, this next topic is going to be a little bit more levity. It's about race. This comes from Rebecca's son at The Hollywood Reporter. WARNERMEDIA inclusion report shows workforce gender parity, room for improvement elsewhere. I was scanning over this article, and I read this last week, and I thought this would be a good whole episode on. It's kind of a down topic, but the numbers are better than what you would think. We talk about diversity in television. We talk about diversity in movies. Just diversity in the entertainment media is very hard right now. And you look at, for me, you look at a comedy writer's room, and you see, 90% white people, white dudes, but still white people. And then you see like 10% women and people of color. And you think, well, I'm not going to fit in. You hear about the writer who was fired from, God, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking about this earlier this morning, and I can't remember what show he was fired from. He was fired. It was a black writer fired from some show that was about race, and he said the N-word in the writer's room, and he got fired. Let me think about that. Let me see. Writer gets fired from writer's room for saying N-word. The N-word. Star Trek Discovery is Walter Mosley. Walter Mosley, he's I believe he's an older man, an older gentleman, an older writer. And when I say older, I mean like in his 40s or 50s. Let's see, Walter Mosley. Walter Mosley, writer. Yeah, because he writes for Snowfall. He is an older gentleman. I was right. He was in his 60s. And he got fired from this comes from the Hollywood Reporter. Google popped it right up. He said he quits. He's no longer writing in the Star Trek Discovery writers' room after using the N-word. And if you look at basically what happened is somebody in the writers' room, they're not naming names, said they were uncomfortable, and they did not feel comfortable with him saying that word, even though he's a black man and the star of the show is a black person. Let's see. Although Mosley, who was black, did not reveal which show he departed, sources tell him that series, renewed in February for its third season with its third showrunner, has experienced serious issues of abusive language in its writer room in the past. I mean, that's stupid. Okay, so he quit, apparently. Let's say fired. People were complaining about it. It's so stupid. I think I've mentioned this before. This is just me saying I think I've mentioned this before. But there was a long time ago when GTA 5 came out on 360 and PS3, and people loved the game, but then one of the criticisms was they felt uncomfortable with the way Franklin was talking to his two other characters, and Franklin lives in the hood. And he uses the N-word a lot. And I mean, I get it. I know you're white and you're playing this game, but that's just that's just the nature of life. Period. And then I had to take a step back. I ruined the punchline to the joke, but to the story. But you take a step back. And you hear and you listen and all these podcasts that are talking about it, all the IGN podcasts talking about it, the Giant Bomb podcast, all the video game podcast, Indoor Kids was still a thing at the time, and none of those people were black, and that's the issue. You felt uncomfortable, but that was just a norm, You hang out with me and some of the guys in college. Let me show you what's up.
Hang out with me and some of the guys and the boys, me and my boys in college.
Okay, so you're gonna feel great about hearing this stuff, and you're gonna feel bad about it. The company WarnerMedia, Warner Brothers, which rebranded itself from Turner after it was bought by AT&T. Had to look around and think about that. The company is close to gender parity among employees with 53 to 47%. 53% male, 47% female ratio in the U.S. and 54-46 worldwide. That's wonderful. That's better than I could have expected. Those numbers could have been worse. That is almost 50-50, which is great. It's very close to 50-50. I'm about 3 degrees off, 3%. WarnerMedia examined racial representation only among its U.S. workforce, where white people represent 61% of all employees and 80% of vice presidents and above. Approximately 13% of WarnerMedia employees are black. 11% are Latinx. I would say Latino. Some kind of Spanish. It's not racist, guys. And 11% are Asian. More people of color were hired or promoted in 2018, 41%, than currently exist at the manager or executive level, signaling that those ranks will grow more inclusive over time. Qualitatively, the company recognized its 28 employee affinity group. Let's go up from that. Okay, so those numbers are great. Those numbers are good. They could be better, especially for the people of color thing. But the gender parity, wonderful. Let's get those numbers tightened up. I mean, obviously, you can't just force it in there. Just blind hire people is what we should do. but great, that's a lot. 61% though, and 80% executive levels. This reminds me of Disney last year. They had 4 black. I did an episode of News Time on it. 4 black executives leave in a matter of in a span of a couple of months, and it's because Disney's not telling the stories. Disney did not do anything to cater to those people. And I was thinking about this. I was watching Coco a couple of months ago because I own it. No big deal. Yeah, I still buy movies. I was watching Coco a couple of months ago, and I was watching the credits because I also do that. I'm so exciting, guys. This is. I was going to say something, but I'm not going to say. So exciting. And if you look at Coco, you'll see the voice cast. Great, beautiful Latino people. I'm not saying Latinx. Great, beautiful Latino people. And then you get to who wrote the movie. And it is like 15 white guys. And then you get to who, see, story by 1, 2, 3, 4 white people. And then you get to the screenplay. And then it's 2 white guys. And then you get to directed by. And it's Lee Unkrich. Unkrich, is that how you pronounce it? Unkrich. And I understand that this person's been at Pixar for the longest amount of time. But there's only so much. You could have given this, I guarantee, to anybody else in this. So, or I don't know if there's like a associate director position, which I doubt there is, but there's a way to give it to somebody of Spanish origin to make this movie. Or am I getting with this? And then if you look at Moana has the same thing. These beautiful Polynesian people. I don't know if that's the reason. I was watching Moana a couple days ago. Like I said, I buy movies. For a guy who doesn't like Disney, I sure do own a couple of Disney movies. I own those and The Princess and the Frog. I only own the ones with the people of color in it. So Mulan. I don't own Mulan. I wish I did. I love Mulan. God, if you want to see me break down and cry, just play Reflection. She doesn't want people to tell her who she is. You look at Moana, beautiful Polynesian people all over this movie. Lin-Manuel, he wrote some songs. But then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who did the story by, who are credited with doing the story by, written by a white guy, directed by 2 white guys. And you can say, oh, but they're the ones who know how to do it. I think there's a way that that people of color at Pixar in particular and Disney in particular can be given movies and TV. Well, no, let's give movies. Can be given movies and they're taught along the way. Pixar wants to be this great incubator, but it's not. It's truly not. You can do the hiring from within. You can create a story from within. You can be as open as you want to talk to your employees and all that jazz. But in the end, you're just facilitating old white people, especially old white men, doing the things. So let's get back to WarnerMedia. If you look at some of their shows, Crazy Rich Asians, the movies too, Random Acts of Flyness on HBO, Insecure on HBO, Claws on TNT. They say Supergirl, but Cartoon Network Steven Universe, and Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. All of those, in Full Frontal, which I've talked about before, Sam B does a blind writer's packet, which means that instead of getting a writer's packet with a name on it, and I think Conan does this. I was listening to Inside Conan, the writers podcast from the 2 head writers over at Conan, and they said they do blind packets, but a lot of their writers are white. I think they have like 1 Hispanic writer, and they had Dion Cole, and then like several years ago, but he got big. And I think they had 1 black writer, but I don't know. Anyway, but if you look at all those shows, those are the diverse ones, and the movies, those are the diverse ones. Those are the ones that are able to. And Sam B, so she had a blind writer's packet. Blind writer's packet, people submit their stuff without their name on it, without even them knowing you're a male or female. And so if you look at her writer's room, especially that first year, so diverse, wonderfully diverse. You got people like Ashley Nicole Black up in there. Now she's starring in Black Lady Sketch Show, a Black Lady Sketch Show. We got Claws ending at season 4 next year. I did not finish season 3. Just watching things on apps that aren't Netflix or Hulu or even Amazon or even HBO. It's just so tough. Like watching stuff on the TBS app, watching Conan the next morning, which I usually do, even when he's not off for 3 weeks like he is right now. He just came back like 2 weeks ago, and now he's off for 3 more weeks. Insane. But watching Conan the next morning on TBS app is just so dreadful because you gotta. It's slow and buggy, and then the commercials are like 7 minutes long. They're like 5 minutes, but still. No, they're like 3 minutes, but still. Let's keep going. The report also examined representation in its content, both on screen and behind the scenes. Here, women lagged farther behind men, representing just 34% of actors in scripted television and 28% of those in film. Behind the camera, the numbers were lower, 23% and 24% respectively. White actors were featured in 76% of roles in supported TV, the scripted TV, and 84% of movie parts, while white crew members represented 77% and 80% of those mediums, respectively. I mean, oh my gosh. And then, that's where the inclusion writer comes in. No one is doing this. You should just be able to. You should be able to get a job if you're, in the entertainment industry if you're not white. I mean, it's despicable how these numbers are. And yeah, I understand that these are people who have been in the industry for God knows how long. But I guarantee that there are people who do just as good a job or better that are different race or different sexuality, and they're not getting these jobs. It's insane. 77% and 80%. God bless America. We just got to start hiring people, baby. Like me. I can do a good job. Diverse content is what connects both creatively and commercially. What? With our audiences. Oh, I didn't finish the sentence. And we know the only way we can put the best content out there is stop calling it content. This all comes from John Stanky, WARNERMEDIA CEO. You can actually read the full report. I've included it inside of the notes, the constitutionals notes. We'll call those the constitutionals. It's a very extensive report, 70 pages PDF, and you can see the numbers all in full color. You can see the types of people they got here. They got some type of Xfinity just texted me, and I thought it was. I was like, oh my gosh, someone's sending me a text, and it's just Xfinity. No one texts me. This is why I can't ever keep a girlfriend. Might have just revealed why I'm so sad. So yeah, I mean, you just see that you see their plan, you see what they're doing, you see the quotes that they have, and I don't know why Awkwafina's in this, but yeah, there you go. Definitely check it out. It's a good report I read about a sentence worth. But it's very extensive. It's very extensive. Hey, listen. If you like what you heard here, head on over to the website, cpluscomedy.com, where there's an interview with my good friend Diona Reasonova. She is an actress on NCIS. She replaced Polly Perrette in the scientist role. So she's a main character on NCIS. She's been there for 2 years now, 2.5, 2 years. This is the 2nd year. So she's been there for 1.5 years. So definitely check it out. It's a really good interview, if I do say so myself, mostly because I wrote it like it's a portfolio. like on New York Times, Washington Post, or the Wall Street Journal. So definitely check it out. I suggest you do. And then I have one coming out next week, and then hopefully a couple more. We'll see. And you can also head on over to youtube.com/C Plus Comedy to see a video version of this podcast. We're going to see me in all of my glory. Hopefully properly lit. I had to set up an extra light because I noticed that the lamp was not doing well for the GoPro. So definitely check that out. And on youtube.com/C Plus Comedy, you can also see our premiere show, News Time. News Time is wonderful. Weekly news show. Like the Daily Show, except less funny. We cover an entertainment topic. This week's topic is IPOs. Yet again, this is my second IPO episode. And we talk about Endeavor, Peloton, and WeWork, their IPOs and why they failed last week. Last week. So definitely check it out. And that's it. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Sequels Comedy. Me on Instagram and Twitter at ChadBlackWhite. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to youtube.com/Sequels Comedy. And that is it for this episode. I'm hanging up, baby.